Good evening, everyone. If you could take your seats, please. Thank you all for coming. My name is Eli Nyberger. I'm director of the Ann Arbor District Library. It's very great to see everyone here today. We're always happy to welcome our visitors from Tübingen, our sister city. Ann Arbor District Library is an independent taxing authority. We are not part of the city. We're not part of the county. We're a separate government with our own elected board and a dedicated tax. So that's a unique scenario that we have here in Michigan and a few other states in the United States. Gives us lots of independence and a lot of opportunity to do lots of exciting things and always partnering with our friends at the city. But the library does serve a larger audience in the city of Ann Arbor. That's the city of Ann Arbor and parts of 7 townships. So about another 60 or 70,000 people than live in the city of Ann Arbor. So the library represents a larger community than just the city itself, and we're always happy to see everyone here today. So it is my pleasure now to introduce our first speaker for this evening, and that is Dr. Missy Stultz, who's the director of the city's Office for Sustainability and Innovation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stultz.
Good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to see all of your beautiful faces here with us today. And I just want to say thank you to Eli and to our wonderful staff working at the Ann Arbor District Library. How fortunate are we to have this gem, this jewel in our city, in our community, and in our region. So thank you, Eli, for all the incredible work you do. Tonight, we have the opportunity to hear from Lord Mayor Palmer from Tübingen, Germany, to talk a little bit about the work that they are doing to advance sustainability. And I'm going to assume, if you're in this room, you know that here in Ann Arbor, we have our own audacious goal of community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030. And we look far, wide, we look within ourselves, within our community, and we certainly look to our sister cities to help us find inspiration as we move forward with those audacious goals. And tonight, I'm excited to take notes, to challenge some of the things that we think are possible, and to see what emerges as a new vision or an enhancement to the vision that we have of together meeting that audacious goal that we hold. So for our program tonight, I just want to share in a moment, we're going to have a special poetry reading, which is a surprise even to me, so I'm excited to hear it. Then we'll turn it over to our mayor, Mayor Christopher Taylor, to give some welcoming remarks, and then we'll turn it on to the star of our show for the evening, Lord Mayor Boris Palmer. So with that, I just want to say gratitude for spending an evening with us. Please enjoy the snacks in the back. You know where the restrooms are. Before you leave, check out some A20 kits that we have in circulation with our library friends to help you figure out what you can do in your own homes to help address the climate crisis. But let's start with a little art, shall we? I'd like to invite our special poetry reader up to share something that they have specially drafted for us. And I don't even know who they are. So where are you, poetry reader? Yes, please, come forward.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very glad that I get to do this. In Tübingen, I do some poetry slam, but I've never done one in English. So we'll see how it goes. Also, the only information really I had about this text was it has to have something to do with climate change and intercultural work. So I hope you can still enjoy it. Change is difficult, uncomfortable, and draining. But it's also inevitable because a lack of action won't keep the climate from changing. If we don't change, we will still end up changed. 10,000 days till 2050, the question, what will be our history? In the year 2050 of this story I'm about to tell, normal planes wander across the sky while pumping toxic waste into the night, though the reason for this was not legislation, a concern for melting ice that outweighed the beach holiday temptation, but rather was it the hurricane's invasion of the sky that in the end made it impossible to fly. Still, you could see the glass as half full. In this future, one doesn't have to fly to go on summer vacation after all. In 2050, you can simply open your front door, take a quick stroll down from your porch to the beach that's been there since the shore creeped up all the way to what was once Ann Arbor's Liberty Street. Ocean as far as the eye can see. Isn't that everyone's vacation dream? Since the water levels have risen in 2050, no one drives a car either. Instead, we all use our eco-friendly solar-powered energy boats. And if you don't own the newest yacht with this great technology, well, you can watch a TikTok and learn how to build a raft, but build it sturdy, because if you drift off into the remainders of Hölderlin's Tower in Tübingen, well, try not to crash. When the heat waves began, we were actually comfortable. No more rush hours and crowded offices, because everyone started working from home. The thermostat kept us cool. Even the energy bills decreased as the frequent storms turned the blades of the wind turbines with ease. 2050, the production of wasteful fast fashion is a ghost of the past. Not necessarily because of its CO2 emissions or pollution of drinking water conditions. Rather, one didn't need endless racks of fancy pants and skirts, because in the online meeting of the future, anything anyone could catch a glance at was your shirt. Sure, not everything is great in this 2050. Energy cut again by a tornado, so off you go, tiptoe to the generator, hoping that you don't meet your new neighbors, the alligator. It's a bit annoying, but it's worth avoiding change, right? Was it worth not switching lanes? After all, we got so far by ignorance, by covering our eyes to scientific facts, by plugging our ears to pleas of nearly half the population. In 2024, half the population's life is experiencing drastic change due to extreme heat, floods, and storms. I know this is upsetting to hear, but don't let the paralyzing fear advance. It is not too late to break out of the trance. Humanity still and will always have a chance. Yes, change might be difficult, uncomfortable, and draining, but we humans are creative, innovative, and most importantly, caring. When people get together, like today in this room, when ideas get shared and cultural exchange resumes, then hope travels across the ocean like a feather. And even in the stormiest weather, we can see its gloom. We are not doomed. Together, we can solve this crisis. Together exists if we care, if we are fair to each other and the planet. Care about your brother from another mother with another mother tongue. Link hands with your sister and combine your whispers so strength carries across the land. Together we can brainstorm, we can transform, and we can plant the seed of a better future for our children from every continent. Thank you.
Wow. I think those might be the kind of surprises we like. Thank you so much. That was truly, truly beautiful. And now it is my great honor to introduce someone that I admire deeply and greatly, who certainly has set the vision for why Ann Arbor is doing what it is doing, and who keeps me focused and grounded and is just a wonderful leader. And that is our mayor, Christopher Taylor. Thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Stoltz. We do lots of things at the City of Ann Arbor, and we often talk about the things that we do as elected officials, but it is entirely stolen valor because nothing gets done without the amazingness and vision and diligence and expertise and just dogged wonderfulness of staff. And so Dr. Stoltz, just by way of reciprocal gratitude to everyone at the city and yourself who do just tremendous work. It's my great pleasure to be here today to welcome you to talk a little bit about Ann Arbor and the city of Tübingen and the things that are going on with respect to climate action. As folks know, we have a long-standing sister city relationship with Tübingen. We have been sister city since 1965, and it has been a long and meaningful history. One thing with respect to that I think we all understand and appreciate is that the sister city relationship is one that is built on people. It's built on community. The world is vast and daunting, and it is such a great comfort to know that there are friends across the sea. And that is truly at the core of our sister city relationship. In addition to those personal and cultural connections, there is also municipal opportunity. We've had last year we had an opportunity to go to Tübingen, as have others before us, and we have welcomed folks from Tübingen here. And for my part, the beauty and inspiration of the sister city relationship is that it gives you the opportunity, it gives the visitor the opportunity, the welcomer the opportunity to envision another reality. We are so fortunate to have folks in Tübingen who are making their way through this world with vision and energy and excitement and forethought. And seeing them do it gives us inspiration to ourselves match those principles. And in exemplifying those principles, there is no one who could speak about them more eloquently and fervently than our speaker today, the leader of Tübingen, Germany, Lord Mayor Boris Palmer. And so the only thing better than hearing me talk for 4 minutes is hearing me talk for 3 minutes. And so I'll just pass it on over to him and be ready to be wowed. Lord Mayor.
The bad news is I will talk much longer than 3 minutes. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. You see the title. Oh, I didn't want that to happen. Not yet. Oh. I wanted that to be a surprise. Now, where's the original title gone? We just had a title that said, what we can learn from Ann Arbor sister city, right? So I want to phrase that the other way around before I start, because we learned so much from our sister city. We had a great program. We've met so many inspiring people, exciting people, people with a mission and a vision, and that is so important because on such a long way, the way to climate neutrality, dear Christopher, is really long. You need fellow people supporting you and helping you if there is something that didn't really work out. And that happens on such a long way. So I want to say thank you for having us, for your hospitality. And since Christopher already got his present, I want you, Missy, to come up to receive your present now in front of all those wonderful people from Tübingen and Ann Arbor, because we had such a great time with you here and such a wonderful program. And therefore, you receive the Tübingen bag.
What?
And the Tübingen Goes Blue bell.
Give it a go.
And later on, we'll talk about that, the recap from Tübingen, so that you can introduce some new taxes and all the other stuff. So, and there's a book inside. That's, of course, a Tübingen book. So, thanks very much. It has been such a pleasure. And since the citizen delegation from Tübingen just arrived today, they had a little bit of trouble, not with Deutsche Bahn, but with Lufthansa, I learned. Could the Tübingen people just stand up for a second so that the Ann Arborites can see you? Thank you for coming here as well, because as Mayor Taylor said, the foundation of this partnership is really people, and people moving across the ocean. And it's our great pleasure to have you as our friends. Thanks very much for that. Okay, now it ruined my story because it came too early, but now I can start with that presentation. So if you are familiar with the library, you will see this is the library. And you might also notice that there is a person that is somehow similar to me. And this happened in 2008. So 2008, I did my first talk here about the same subject. And so many people showed up. It was just such a wonderful event that I thought I should do that a second time in my life. and now I have the opportunity to do it at the same spot. That is really great. And it's a cliffhanger story, but because at that time, I only could talk about ideas. We only started the program Tübingen Goes Blue at the time. And now, 16 years later, of course, we have results and experiences, and I can talk about them. So is anybody here, I know at least one person who was here in volume 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you had to wait 16 years for the next step. Now, here it goes. By the way, you can see that, and that is really thrilling, in the on the website of the Ann Arbor Library. The whole session has been videotaped, and that interview there, that is the moment when I answer the question, what is special about Ann Arbor and what I take home with, for the first time in my life, I've seen LED streetlights, and I want to introduce them in Tübingen. And it did happen. So that was the first idea I brought back from Ann Arbor, because you were much earlier than we were with the introduction of the LED streetlight. Okay, so now climate neutral by 2030, how do we get there? That's a new title so that we can learn from each other. We already heard something about Tübingen, but for the Ann Arborites, the important fact is that the two cities are really quite similar. So by far the largest employer is the university and the university hospital. And we are both university towns, very strongly dominated by the universities. We are medium-sized cities, Ann Arbor being a little bit larger, 120,000 people. We have 90,000 people. And we started early with climate protection campaigns. Tübingen started in the year 1993, becoming a member of the European Climate Alliance. So what happened since 2008? Now this is a figure that shows the carbon dioxide emissions in Tübingen, and you see they're on the right track, so they're going down. We started with some 8.5 tons per capita, and we're now down to 4.6 tons per capita. So we've seen a reduction of 45% in that period of time. And of course, we're really proud of that. If you look at the diagram, you also see that we've seen the biggest progress in the blue one, and that is electricity. We're not so successful as far as heating and traffic are concerned. But electricity is really going well. I'm going to refer to that later on. Now we are in the year 2019, since you've seen what happened since 2008. And in 2019, something very special happened. We've just heard that wonderful poem from a young citizen. And in 2019, many people showed up on Tübingen streets, did rallies, Fridays for Future, and they demanded the city to do even more to protect the climate. And therefore, I came up with the idea of a 10-step plan for a climate-neutral Tübingen. I honestly must confess that I would not have had the idea to propose that without those young people on the street. Because to me, a year before, in 2018, that would have seemed over-ambitioned. No chance to convince the public to do that. But since so many young people demanded to do more, I thought this is the right time. Council was of the same opinion. And in fact, only 2 months later, after the 2019 election, Council unanimously voted in favor of a plan for climate neutrality by the year 2030. And then we started to draft a plan. We had lots of stakeholder discussions. I'm going to show some of them later on. And by November 2020, so after a year, Council again voted unanimously in favor of the climate protection program. And that indeed has the goal to become climate neutral by the year 2030. And the interesting thing is, we've seen Ann Arbor and Tübingen are similar in many respects. Ann Arbor did the same thing at the same time. So in April 2020, you again were a little bit earlier than we, you decided on the A20 plan. And the A20 plan has the same goal. 2030 is the year to become climate neutral. So I got that out of the A20 plan. That was your participation process. And again, it's almost the same to what we did. Coming back to that one. We had a town hall meeting, you had that as well. We had workshops with citizens. We had digital workshops. At that time, it was the pandemic. It wasn't so easy to have town hall meetings anymore. The town hall meeting just took place 1 week before the shutdown started. We had a workshop with the city council to discuss all the issues. We had dialogue with green action groups. And we had 3 surveys with the local survey app. That is something that is special. Unfortunately, it's not possible anymore. But at that time, we had an opportunity to have voting by app and smartphone. And we had a one man, one vote system. So we could connect it to the data of the city so that you could not do what you normally do in online voting, 2 or 3 or 5 times the same thing, just one man, one vote. And using that app, we could ensure that we're on the right track so that people really would support the ideas we're proposing. Now back to this one. What's the situation in 2020? It's more or less 21, 2017, more or less 2020. You see the Tübingen emissions, and heating is now by far the largest problem, whereas electricity has gone down to only 21%. The reason being that we have built a lot of renewable energy power plants, whereas mobility stays more or less at 44%. So we are really aiming at heating. And then again, roughly the same. I heard this morning that you have 70% of the emissions coming from the building sector. So we really need to target the heating sector now, since we have been quite successful with the electricity sector. And then again, an interesting figure. You see Tübingen is about 450,000 tons per year. Ann Arbor is above 2 million tons per year. So that does not mean that Ann Arbor is doing a bad job. But this is something that's very important to indicate. The average carbon dioxide emissions in Germany are down to 8 tons per capita. In the US, they're still well above 20 tons. So you come from a very different level. And the main reason really is that the price of fossil fuels are much higher in Germany, something that is not very popular. So there might be some people who think energy is too expensive in Germany, but since it's more expensive, the incentive to save energy is much higher. Having said that, I could point out that there is a very easy solution to the problem we've just heard in the poem, and that is impose taxes on carbon dioxide. High enough, and we don't need town hall meetings and misses and mayors. It's going to happen automatically. Unfortunately, I don't see the political will to do it, because that creates other problems. So we still need us, but that would be an easier solution. If the price goes up for fossil fuels, the alternatives will come in. Okay, now this is the next one. Okay, let's look at the heating sector. Here you see our goal, and some of the most important steps on the way. Of course, we need to substitute oil heatings, and we want to expand the existing heating networks, district heating networks. Also, we want to switch from cogeneration, fossil fuels, to renewable fuels. So how are we going to do that? This is the map of Tübingen, the core of Tübingen, and what you can see here in green is the area where we want to expand the district heating. There is district heating in parts of this area, but the green areas are the areas where we think it's feasible to have district heating. Some of the Tübingen citizens might find that map interesting as well, because you can look where you are. If it's not green, you have to look for other resources, because we won't reach out with a district heating system to your home then. But the green area is where we want to go. The yellow area is the university hospital that already does have a district heating system that's 100% carbon neutral. That's from a biomass. So we asked our citizens, what do you think about that idea, and would you even support mandatory connection to the district heating? Why is that important? If you only connect every third or fourth house, you have the same length of the tubes underground, so it's the same cost, but only 1/3 or 1/4, 1/4 of the revenue. So it's really important that almost all the people use it then. And you see, we have a majority of people supporting the idea of mandatory connection to the district heating system. And we actually put that in place already in some areas, and the results are good. People are happy with it, and we have a much more feasible way to introduce the district heating to their homes. There are pictures showing what it looks like. It's underground, of course. It's basically hot water. And you see the blue line. This is one area that has been recently connected to the district heating system. We also realized that we have to change the existing district heating system, because we do have one. No, I should say we do have 3, and they're not connected. Now we realize we need to connect them, and we need to build new power plants. The cogeneration power plant could be in the center of town. That wasn't a problem. But switching to renewables, we will need, for example, that's the red spot on the right-hand side above. We will need to connect the district heating system to the purification plant, because there is a lot of energy that goes from the purification plant into the river. On average, that water is like 60 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And we will install a heat pump there to reuse that heat and send it back to the consumers. But therefore, we need a new connection. So that is a new line over there. And then you need to distribute that heat to all of the new areas. Therefore, we came up with the idea of a backbone system, so we can push the hot water from one end of the city to the other, depending on the demand and depending on the heat we actually can get there. These are the large green dotted lines. So this will become kind of a circle by the year 2030. And this is kind of the basis to get the heat to the consumers. Also, we're adding a large solar thermal plant. I think I have a picture of that. Yes. So that's what it's going to look like. It's not real yet, but they're building it at the moment. And that large solar thermal will also be connected to the district heating system. And again, if there is sun, we can use the heat there, transport it to the backdome system wherever we need it. If there is no sun, we will use the heat from the purification plant. And if there's not enough heat from there, we will add some thermal from burning of wood. So these are the 3 major sources we want to use. The thing down there, I think, Mr. Brill, is a large-scale heat pump. Right. Yeah. So that's what the machinery is going to look like. You have a lot more to read here. I hope you will do that as long as I think what the English words are. And then, again, a similarity. You've just shown us Bryant, the Bryant neighborhood. where you want to start with a geothermal, yeah, Bryant neighborhood, yeah, where you want to start with a geothermal small-scale district heating. We have done such a thing, similar to that, in an area in Tübingen-Bühl. You can see that here. This is cold heating. So what is cold heating? We have a well here, and we can get water with a temperature of like 55, 60 degrees Fahrenheit from there. We pump that up, and then you see all the red and blue tube lines here. So we deliver that water at that temperature to homes, and there you have a heating pump that draws on that. The advantage is in winter, when it's really cold, the heating pump draws on 55 degrees instead of maybe 0 degrees. And that makes it much more efficient, also, of course, less expensive. And this heating system is already been built. I think it's going to be operated this winter. Yeah, we'll start this winter. And we hope that consumers will be happy with it, because this is climate neutral heating system and it's inexpensive. Looking at the electricity sector, what I did not need 16 years ago are glasses, because I realized I can't read it here, it's too small. So that makes it difficult to look behind. Right, so one of the goals we have is reduced consumption of energy in the classic areas. However, we do know that we need more electricity than we need today, because the heating sector will require a lot of electricity, and also the mobility sector will require a lot of electricity in the future. So we will have higher demand, and therefore we will have to increase the electricity production even further. We think that it should be at least 150% of the 2020 level. Now that is the point where I have to ask Mr. Brühl to stand up. Now who is Mr. Brühl? Just for a second to show who you are. Because Mr. Brühl joined us on this journey. He has already been invited by Missy to become the CEO of the new Ann Arbor power utility, but so far he is the vice president, that's my opinion on it, the vice president of the Stadtwerke Tübingen, the Tübingen utility. You see, it has been around since 1862. It's not 200 years old, but more than 160 years old. You see the numbers, I don't quote them. Important is it's community owned. So the city of Tübingen owns that power utility, and therefore we can do a lot of things you can't do if you have a large provider who is not really interested in your community. And this is a really important thing, and I stress it because that might be an interesting thing to consider when voting on founding such a utility in November, and I heard that you're going to propose that. All right, so what have we done with the Stadtwerke Tübingen? This is what Ann Arbor wants to do. Oh yes, you did. You put it on, thank you. So this is what Ann Arbor wants to do. You had already a plan in the first draft from 2020. Now you had to change it. We did that as well. And now the proposal is to found a sustainable energy utility, SEU. That's a wonderful term, and maybe that will be as useful for you as the Stadtwerke Tübingen are in our case when working on climate neutrality. So some examples, what are we doing? We have, of course, imported the idea of LED street lighting from Ann Arbor, but then we have improved it. Because the funny thing is, if you walk down Ann Arbor at 4 o'clock in the morning because you have jet lag, which I did, you are really alone. However, the street lights are on, as if there were a lot of people. And that's the same in Germany, of course. And therefore, we have invented a technology. The idea came from Switzerland. And you can see that with a car there. So there where a car is, you have full light. And ahead of it, at the moment it drives from left to right, you see the LEDs are down to 20% of their maximum capacity. And one is going up to 50. And when the car drives further to the right, you see where it is. You have full light, and all the others are going down again. And that really works. It works with people as well. I've seen it works with pets as well, so no need to worry about them, if there's anything to say. And that really reduces the power consumption from LEDs, again, by about 80%. So LED is 80% less than conventional light bulbs, and using that technology is 80% less on LED. And we really experience that. It's true. And we're hoping to replace all our all our street lights by the year 2030 with that technology. Now, interesting thing here, I read that in the newspaper. You have just decided to use stronger LED lights. However, you have only half the number of street lights in the city, if the numbers are right. So we have 11,000. You have 5,000 here. So you can see, you can do the things differently. I don't know whether this system would work with your streetlights because they communicate with a mesh system. And only if the distance is not too far can they really communicate, and you'll have the effect you want, that you don't really realize that it's dark behind you and dark in front of you because you see only the light where you are. Maybe that would not work in Ann Arbor, I don't know. But for us, it was a feasible idea, and now we're introducing that to the whole of the city. And sometimes I call it the Harry Potter street lighting. Goes like that. Now, this has been the most important project in recent years, and it still will be in the years to come, to increase our own power production from renewables. Here is a graph that shows you that the combination of wind and solar is really the best you can do, because in summer you have a lot of solar, but less wind. At least it's the case in Germany. I don't know what that would be like here. And in winter you have very little solar, but you have the best wind time. So the two together really add up to a very good pattern. You see those wind turbines? I think they're really owned by our power utility. Is it Ellwangen? Yeah. So this is a wind farm we have built in a nearby region, like 1 hour away from Tübingen. And they produce wind energy that we can sell to our consumers in Tübingen. This is Tübingen itself. And you see those red lines. They indicate where we wanted to build wind farms in Tübingen itself. So downtown Tübingen is where you can read the word Tübingen. And the map is showing an area that is roughly double the size of Tübingen. We also asked our citizen in that app whether they would support that. And this was really very interesting because we see a very strong support for wind turbines in the area of Tübingen itself. This is not the case throughout the country. So we have some people really strongly opposing wind turbines. And the support in Tübingen is really helpful. At the moment, we are looking only at the area with the number 1. The others are not so interesting anymore. The number 2 area, unfortunately, is the area where the German army likes to fly helicopters, right? And they don't want to move to another site. So we didn't know they do it, but for that reason, we're going to use the area with the number 1, I hope. This is maybe the most important part of the program. So this is really a game changer, because if we are successful with that wind park, that might produce as much as 1/3 of Tübingen's electricity consumption. So it's really a large-scale game changer that we're talking here about. This is the area where the wind farm could be. You see, 30 to 40%, depending on the number of wind turbines. And we hope to have that in operation by 28, I think. This is what we've done and what we want to do with the Stadtwerke Tübingen. We started in 2011 with 2 hydropower stations in Tübingen itself. That was it. And that accounted for like 3% of the total electricity demand in Tübingen. So that was the start, 2011. Now you see the curve going up. The yellow is photovoltaics. The light green is wind power. Hydro stays where it was because we didn't find another river. There is nothing. But we really started to ramp up the capacities with wind and photovoltaics. The red line shows the investment. The investment has all been taken by the power utility, so there was no money from the community necessary until that point. So the total investment is 250 million euros so far, and we already reached like 80% of the electricity demand in Tübingen. Mr. Brühl promised me next year we will reach 100%. Cross fingers. And we expect to be at 125% by the year 28. So for that part, I think we can really be very optimistic, having the Stadtwerke Tübingen, that locally owned power utility, that we will reach our goal to become climate neutral as far as the electricity sector is concerned, because we're already that far and there are no real obstacles to get where we want to go. This is what that can look like. So where do you put large-scale PV power plants? You could do it on landfill, of course, which was your idea, and maybe you'll have a second chance to do it. We did it on the local Autobahn, because these areas are really of no use for anybody. So you don't do any harm. And this was the start. It's now even bigger. I think there should be, no. Okay, there's no other picture. But this was only the start. That's 1.1 megawatt. And today this has been expanded along the road to 8 megawatts. So it's eight times bigger now than it used to be 3 years ago. We talked to our community, as you do, and we had different programs encouraging people to build their own solar on their roofs. I have to address the Tübingen people now. I'm not so happy with those results, though, because there are still 95% of our roofs without solar in Tübingen. So we have reached like 4 to 5%, but there's so much more potential. And I would really be happy if we could use it, because if you look at the outcome, you save money. And it's one of the real miracles to me why people don't want to save money with their roofs. Maybe you can explain it to me. I don't know what the reason is, but we're still working on that. You see, we did that for all the 16 years we've been talking about. We had subsidy programs. We had the PV obligation, stuff like that. So if you build a new building, you have to have PV in Tübingen now. The state did the same later on. And we do see some progress, but it's not as much as we could have. Here's the other picture, I thought. That shows the enlargement to 8 megawatts right along the local Autobahn. I call it local Autobahn. And there you see what the community thinks about it. This is something that also gets a lot of support in the community. Almost 3/4 of the people said, yes, we support that idea of ground-mounted PV plants. These are the effects of the solar roof program. So you can see we are now again on track. We had like 8 years where there did not happen anything. Now it's getting more, it's getting better, and solar is becoming cheaper and cheaper. This is what the community did itself. So we had, when 2019, the decision was taken to become climate neutral, we had more funds from council, and then we started mounting more and more PV panels on the roofs of schools and kindergartens and buildings like that, community-owned buildings. And here again is something that we have not achieved, something that went wrong. When we discussed the plan, we thought that we could reach 200 megawatts using the existing roofs by the year 2030. And now you see the blue, it's going up, and it's going up faster than it used to do, but it's not within range. So we should reach the gray line, and we won't do that. So that's, you can't deny that. Therefore, we are now readjusting the program. Council will vote on that, I think, next year. And we will size down our goal for solar, but we will size up our goal for wind farms, because we see that this is going better. So you have to adapt to what you've done in the past, but we won't give up the goal. And this is wonderful, isn't it? So I found that in the Ann Arbor News, and it's a wonderful article. I can recommend to read it. And the article says, and I asked Christopher, and it's true, that Christopher thought that the bike lanes and the people biking in Tübingen are so interesting that he should try this as a mayor in Ann Arbor as well. And I witnessed it, it's true. You can meet him on his bike in the streets. Here is the proof. So that's Christopher on the way back from the community network, television network, where we met. And of course, he is doing it much more safely than we do. I don't think any Tübingen citizen wears that kind of jacket, do you? But it's really is a good start, and that is maybe what we gave back to you. I took the LED, you took the bicycle. That is how our sister citizenship does work. So what have we done in the mobility sector? We have had a referendum, and the referendum actually showed that we don't have the support of the majority of the people to build a light rail in Tübingen, which is a pity, but we have to accept it, so no light rail. Referendum took place. We have a lot of other things that we're going to do. One of the most costly is going to an electric bus fleet. Where are we at the moment? We call it modal split. I hope that translates into English and is not German English. We have a modal split of like 3 out of 4 trips in Tübingen without the car. So that is obviously very different to the situation you are coming from. And therefore, it's even more important to switch to electric vehicles, because it's unlikely that you will do without cars. That's not the future that we're going to see, but we can do it without carbon dioxide emissions. Just a quick remark on that. This is the light rail network in the region that still will be built. So the Tübingen part of it, the downtown light rail, won't be built, but the light rail network will be built. You see Tübingen in the center above, on top. And Reutlingen, which is the neighboring city, Reutlingen is as large as Ann Arbor, that's 120,000 inhabitants. And these two cities together form the center of our region. And the blue and green lines, these are existing or new tracks that are going to be built. The whole program should cost like 2,000 million euros. So that's really expensive, but we think that doing that will improve the options for people to come to the center using a rail system. And here you see what we've done last year. The German government has started the so-called Deutschland ticket, a ticket that is valid in the whole of Germany for buses and trains. And City Council decided to subsidize that. So it's 49 euros in the rest of Germany, and it's 34 euros in Tübingen itself. That's much cheaper, and therefore we see a lot of people buying it now. Also, it's for free to drive buses in Tübingen on Saturdays. So these are all programs that Council has decided on and that are subsidized. Ann Arbor wants to invest the stunning amount of 650 million euros in the expansion of the public transport system. So again, similar ideas what to do. Since you didn't have rails here that you could expand on, you think about buses, of course. And then again, this is totally similar. We want to convert the existing diesel bus fleet to an electric one. And this is really expensive. So we estimate that that program will cost us up to 60 million euros in the years to come until 28. And I estimate to convert all the existing 82 buses, we will end up with about 80 million euros. And look at the numbers here in Ann Arbor. You expect 86 million euros for exactly the same program, converting diesel buses to electrical vehicles. We had the mayor already cycling. Now we need new infrastructure to do so and have fun. And here you see a bridge. Again, that is not a photograph, but you could do that photo from October on, because the bridge is already almost completed and we will open it in October. And that bridge is part of the super cycle network that has been heavily subsidized by the federal government. So we got like a 90% subsidy, 90% of the cost has been covered by the federal government, and that allowed us to build that large-scale cycling infrastructure. The roundabout there apparently is the first cycling roundabout in Germany. They have a lot of them in the Netherlands, but this one seems to be the first in Germany. We had a lot of funding for that program. So you see, when I talked to you in 2008, we had a budget of 100,000 euros for cycling infrastructure per year. And we've driven that up to 7 million per year. So big changes need big investments. But we see a lot more cyclists now. We even have the first congestions, bicycle congestions. So sometimes it's not possible to move across a red light in the time there is the green phase, and then you have to stop because so many cyclists before you are stopping you from crossing the red light. Right, okay, so a lot of money went there. 1/3 of it was local money, 2/3 came from state government and federal government. This is what that supercycle network should look like when it's finished. So we have one east-west bound blue ribbon, we call it, or blue belt it's called here. And then we have corridors of bridges and underbridge constructions that enable you to cross the river, the railway, even the mountains, and the big inner city streets. This is a closer look at the bicycle bridge. And these are pictures of the other bridge at the east side. And you can see that with the bridge and the underpass, you can indeed cross the railway and the river within 1 minute. And that used to take you 10 minutes, or you could not cycle at all. Ich sprach gerade vom Gruseltunnel für die Tübinger. How do we finance that? Now here you can see another thing that Council has agreed, and that has not so much support. That's important to point out. If you ask people whether they want to pay more for parking, support drops. So it was very bold of Council to decide that all the green areas in town will be areas where you have to pay for parking. It's not only downtown Tübingen, that would be the, what's that, gray, yellow-gray area, orange area, but we're expanding the parking fees to all of the green areas. So that is Tübingen at its core, like 60,000 inhabitants. And that creates a lot of revenue that we can use to improve public transport systems and to lower the prices of public transport fees. Of course, we need to build the EV infrastructure, not so much to be said about that. I know that you're doing this as we are. We also have, and I found that interesting because you just started such a program. We also have promotional programs for all types of things, so you can get some rebates for cargo bicycles, for refrigerators, for photovoltaic systems, for heating pumps, for renovation, lots of things where you can get some subsidies, but we only have 300,000 euros budget per year. And I really admire you for your millage that creates a revenue of 2.1 million to do basically the same things. And I heard 70% of the people voted in favor of taxing themselves to do so. Well, that's worth an applause of the Tübingen side. So here you're much more successful than we are. And now we're almost at the end. Here is something that's really special and that's almost unique. At least it's unique in Germany. I can't say it's unique worldwide, but it's a very special thing. And that is why we brought those recups and reballs to Ann Arbor. So we have introduced a tax 3 years ago on one-way packaging for food as well as for drinks. So if you take such a cup, you will be taxed 50 cents, and that goes directly to the city budget. And we've seen a drop in the sales of these types of one-way packaging. Still, we create a revenue of 1 million euros that can go to support other measures we've been talking about. And Tübingen is by far leading in the country as far as the use of reusable stuff is concerned. So we estimate that on average, the Tübingen citizens use 10 times more reusable bowls and cups than the average German. And that is because it costs you some money to use this type of thing. So this is something that we're really proud of. And we're at the moment waiting for a decision of the Supreme Court of Germany, because there is a certain American company with an M, it's not Michigan, that is suing the city of Tübingen and claiming that this is unconstitutional. So we will see what the Supreme Court will rule, waiting for that. But unless the Supreme Court stops us, I think we will continue to tax that type of stuff. And these are the facts. I've been talking about those already, so that I can come to my conclusion. I think I could show you some ideas and some results that are interesting, as I learned a lot of your ideas and your results. And I do admit, if you look at all the sectors, we can't claim that we're close to climate neutrality. That's a claim that's not substantial. But we're on the right path. So we're reducing carbon dioxide emissions substantially, and we see that the community is supporting it. And if it's not the year 2030, maybe it's the year 2032 or 34, I think at the end of the day, that's not the decisive number. It's decisive that we reduce carbon dioxide emissions as fast as we can, and that we do it in a reasonable way that may also create wealth for our communities in the future. And I do think that this is possible, and I hope that we will have follow-ups to talk where we got in the future, and that this will be part of our partnership for the years to come. So the final slide is, let's keep it blue, let's go blue, and let's hope for a good future for our children. Thanks very much. Missy asked me whether I take questions. If I survive, yes.
Anyone have a question?
I can ask the first question. Why do I wear that blue suit? Yes, because of the campaign.
How you are communicating to Tübingen citizens? You have any volunteer group or anything, city council members volunteer their time to spread the word? How you are spreading the word of your plan to the individual citizens?
How do we spread the word? I can go back a little bit because I had one slide with examples. I was at the very beginning here. Yeah. So let me first state that we are not as good as reaching out to the communities as you are. That is something that really impressed me during our stay, and that is certainly something that Americans do better than Germans. So community neighboring work, that's really impressive, what results you have here. So what have we done? How do we spread the word? Well, I wear the blue suit in Tübingen as well, and some people know that this is related to our local climate protection campaign. In the beginning, we had events like a blue town hall. There was also a slide showing that, didn't mention it, but it's here. See? So we covered the town hall in blue, years ago, and said Tübingen goes blue. So we created awareness, and also this car was quite famous. So this was the mayor's car, a very small car, that shows that it can be fun to protect the climate. And we used the techniques to get people together, town hall meetings. We had digital participation projects, as I explained, workshops with experts, with the communities. So we try to keep in touch with people. Also, we have a local newspaper still. They publish a lot. And so people can be informed what we're doing. We have the locally owned power utility. They have their own information leaflets. So I think monthly, or it's monthly, that every household gets a leaflet from the power utility, what they're doing. So there's quite a lot of information around. But then again, I want to stress, we're not doing it on the intense level that you're used to. It's more offers and not so much reaching out to the people. Yeah. We have a mic somewhere?
Yeah. Hold on. Wait, 1 second. We're recording, so we want to capture it.
I just wanted to add, as a citizen of Tübingen, to your question, that once a year our Lord Mayor invites everybody, every citizen, to his yearly speech, annual speech, and he explains us a lot in those speeches. And the newspaper is writing it, and it's a big event to go there and to see him and be seen and so on. And we always learn a lot. Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
Good to know.
You mentioned one referendum that was not agreeing with some of the measures. Have there been other citizen pushback? Do people tend to just say, hey, this is all great, or how has that evolved with public opinion?
That certainly was the most important pushback. Did we have those? Yes, we had pushbacks, not that scale, but for example, when we introduced a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour, that's 20 miles, a little bit more. In downtown Tübingen, so many people protested that I decided this is too much, and we went back to 40. Well, last week we went back to 30, I know, but for 12 years, we had 40 kilometers because people wouldn't accept it. And I think it's important to listen to the community, to the people, because if you go too far, there is nobody behind you anymore. And honestly, the global climate does not depend only on Tübingen or Ann Arbor. So you have to compromise. Yeah.
What programs have you instituted in the schools of Tübingen to educate the students about this program?
We offered to all our schools that the environmental officer and his team, like Mrs. Stahl's team, would do sessions in schools. Some schools are really interested in, others are not. We can't force them because the school is not a communal institution, but a state institution. And others are very interested. For example, the former director of one Tübingen school, the Geschwister Scholl School, is among us. He might add something to that. And there we do a workshop, a whole day workshop every year with class 8. And at the end of that workshop, I always come up the hill, it's uphill, with a bicycle, of course. And they ask me questions, and I explain them what we're doing and what our results are. So it depends very much on the school, but maybe you want to add something about that. No?
Hey.
They see it. Yeah, I guess you experience that as well. It's interesting if the mayor comes with a bicycle. Yeah.
You indicated that a significant amount of the heat energy is from wood. Could you explain the source of the wood? It is a carbon emission when you burn that, but I'm just curious about the source of the wood.
Well, there's an ongoing debate whether wood is carbon neutral or not. It's true, it's better not to burn it and to build houses from wood, because that contains the carbon dioxide for maybe 600 years. That's the time the town hall in Tübingen has been around. So these are oak trees that have been chopped 1435, and they have taken out carbon dioxide of the atmosphere starting from the year 1200 or so. So this is a very long-term deposit for carbon dioxide. You're right about that. But on the other hand, there is a lot of wood, if you use a forest, that can't be used for building purposes anyway. So it's the trunk only you can use for that, and there is a lot of wooden material that needs to go somewhere. You can leave it in the forest, sure, that's what some people demand, but if you chop the woods for construction, you always have that part of the tree as well. And the area where we want to get the wood from is like a diameter of 100 kilometers, not further. And that's all from certified forests where they do sustainable forestation. Yeah, certified sustainable forest work. So I think it's reasonable. And why do we need it? Well, we can use geothermal, we can use wells, we can use the heat pumps, the large-scale heat pumps, we can use solar, but still there's a lot of flexibility in the supply. So there are times where there is no sun. During the night, normally we don't have a lot of sun in Germany. And in winter, it's especially cold during the night, of course. So if the solar is out, and unfortunately there is no wind at that time, we might not have enough electricity to use the large-scale heat pump. So you run out of supply sometime, and you can't really convince people that climate neutrality should mean that for 2 weeks or so you won't have heating in your house. That's like power outage for a week. That's not feasible, really. And for that reason, we think that we do need that reliable source of energy, because you can burn the wood when there is nothing else. So we keep the wood as a reserve. It's not a daily use, but it's a reserve power resource in a case where other supply is not available. And since we have that backbone network, we can use that one input and still serve all our consumers. That's the idea.
I wonder what you can say about what motivates people in Germany to make these improvements. Other people here think, well, what difference does it make if Ann Arbor makes big changes if other people don't too? And some people think it's going to be more expensive. Some people think, well, we want to be a good example. And sustainable energy in the long run will be more efficient. It'll cost you less. If you build buildings with better insulation, it's going to cost you less. But what motivates people in Germany to support this? What's important to them?
Right. Depends very much on the people. So there are different reasons, I guess. There are people like, I guess, has he gone already? Our young poet? Oh, maybe he's over there. I guess our young poet would answer, because of my future. So the Fridays for Future movement, they are intrinsically motivated. They demand us to do something because and I think they're right, because they believe that their future will be brighter if we solve that problem and don't leave it to them. So that would be the answer of those. Really, we had the picture, yeah, somewhere. Yeah. So if you'd ask those people, I think many of them would answer that way. But of course, there are other people, and I personally think that the best way to explain it to a community, so all kinds of people, is that in the long run, it will be more expensive not to do anything about it. So we see flooding in Germany at this time of the year, parts of Eastern Europe. It's not global warming, but it's somehow connected to it. And the damage is becoming more expensive from year to year. So people see that in the news, and I do think that many of them believe that it's kind of reasonable to prevent that kind of damage if possible. So that could be an argument. But in general, I think if you demand too much, you will lose them. Not those intrinsically motivated people, but most people think about themselves and not only about their grandchildren. And I think that's okay. So you cannot expect that people are completely without their own interest. And therefore, I think it's always balancing it. And for the local level, the most interesting part would be a development like this. So what's that mean? Cut down the carbon dioxide emissions and increase the number of jobs and wealth in your city. That's the most attractive idea. And actually, I didn't stress that, but in that 16 years, we had 40% less carbon dioxide emissions. I showed that slide. But indeed, we had a 40% increase in jobs in Tübingen as well, and a threefold increase in tax revenues of the city. So we really had a period of time, don't know what the future will be like, we had a period of time when I could argue it is possible to create more wealth for the city and reduce carbon dioxide emissions. And if that is possible, that is interesting, because that might be something like a model for others, not for Ann Arbor. But if you look at developing countries, if you'd explain them reducing carbon dioxide emissions means basically that you become poorer, I don't think you will find many supporters. In Africa, that's certainly not an option. So we need that type of remodeling our economy if we want to be successful on the global level. But also, if nobody is doing it, why should others do it? So if we can do that, it might have a much bigger impact than we think if we look on the map and see those small spots, Tübingen and Ann Arbor. So that's my explanation to the community. And I think most people would more or less support that idea. Of course, you have opponents, but not so many.
So I think this will be our last question.
Oh. Hello there. First of all, again, a welcome to our guests to Ann Arbor. Second of all, I was just wondering about food waste, because a lot of communities are worried about food waste and composting and sort of increasing efforts on that. I just wondered what your city was doing.
I didn't show a slide because we focus on carbon dioxide emissions connected to fossil fuels. And food is a completely different story. Therefore, I haven't shown that. For example, we have a food sharing initiative in town. And when they started their operations, I offered them that they could use the town hall entrance for one of their distributors. So now we have a food sharing distributor in town hall at the center of the city, and volunteers bring food there and others can take it from there. So there's a food sharing initiative, and that is pretty successful. We also have something that's similar to what we've seen in the Bryant community. It's called Tübinger Tafel. So supermarkets dispose of stuff they can't sell anymore, but still can be eaten, to a local volunteer initiative, and they distribute all that to poorer people. So that is another food-saving initiative that is really important. It's also important to the community. I think it's even more important to the community than only saving food. In general, I think we still waste a lot of it. So these are only small-scale initiatives, but we're concerned about it as well, and we're trying to do something about this as well. But it's not at the center of the strategy to become climate neutral. Yeah.
Lord Mayor Palmer, thank you so much for taking your time to be here tonight.
Thank you.
I hope you all greatly enjoyed the remarks, the presentation, or leaving with some new ideas and inspiration. Sadly, the library is going to close shortly, so we do need to transition out. But if you have not yet, please sign up